Welcome back everyone to the next video in the deep dive series, where we'll be covering every single region and what kind of content you'll expect in your Leagues 4 journey. This time we'll be looking at Morytania. In the last Trailblazer, Morytania was one of the most popular regions, mainly because it was the only region that had a raid available. So for a lot of people, the fun of actually going and doing a raid, some of the most difficult PvM content in the game, with all of the overpowered relics, well, that was just a selling point entirely on its own. Unfortunately, a lot of people also found that the zone was very dense with PvM content. There was a lot of bosses to do, a lot of deep grinds that you had to go for. And as a result, I feel like a lot of people sort of burnt out with this region and didn't have a very good memory of it looking back. However, the sheer power of this region cannot be understated. And with up to 5 times the drop rate, those grinds aren't as bad as they used to be. So whether you're a Leagues veteran who skipped out on Morytania the first time, or maybe this is your first time ever playing Leagues, let's dive in. Now, Morytania looks pretty big, but it kind of cheats by having a bunch of useless swampland with really nothing to do in the middle. Basically, your cutoff from Misthalin is going to be the Patrodomus Temple. So Canifis, the Slayer Tower, Port Phasmatis, the Pirate Islands are also included, like Mostly Harmless and Harmony Island, and the Vampire regions in the south, which includes Bergdarat, Sleep, and Meyerditch. You'll also have access to the vampire city of Darkmeyer. However, this is not going to be available to you right from the start. This is because, unlike most other regions, you won't actually have the capstone quest for the area auto-completed when you unlock the zone. It means that Sins of the Father, as well as A Taste of Hope, are going to be quests you're going to have to complete to get full access to the zone, including Darkmeyer. You will have the Darkness of Hollowvale auto-completed, so you'll have the full vampire quest up to there. And you'll also have the Great Brain Robbery completed, so you won't have to do the pirate quests. This kind of gives you an immediate goal to work on if you choose Morytania. And while the requirements aren't super high, this might also make you consider saving Morytania for like a second or a third unlock, just so that you already have the requirements going in and you don't have to limit yourself to just the first part of the zone. Not only is Darkmeyer really great, but Taste of Hope and Sins of the Father actually have very good experience rewards built in. A Taste of Hope will give you 2,500 experience, and you can use this 3 times on any skill as long as it's level 35. More importantly though, it will give you the Draken's Medallion, which you can use for unlimited teleports to the Theater of Blood area. Really close to the bank, very convenient, and of course, right next to Theater of Blood, which you should probably expect to do if you're going to be picking Morytania. We'll get into that though. Sins of the Father is even better. You're going to get 15,000 experience that you can spend 6 times. Just as long as a skill is over level 60, and you can use this on the same exact skill. So this is 90,000 experience raw that is going to be multiplied by whatever your bonus is. This could easily be over 1,000,000 experience to one skill. And you'll also unlock the Darkmeyer teleport using the Draken's Medallion, which will basically give you a very fast teleport to Darkmeyer. Again, this city is great. There's a lot to do here. Before we talk too much about the skilling methods, there's a couple more quests in Morytania, actually quite a good deal of them, that also have good experience rewards or just good quest rewards that you should definitely keep your eyes on. Night at the Theater, which only requires you to do an entry mode Theater of Blood to complete, will give you 4 hits of 20,000 experience to any combat skill above level 50, excluding Prayer. So this is a really easy way to get one of your lagging skills behind, or you can just dump it on your main combat style if you're really just wanting to speed it up. Over in Barrows, a strange old man has a mini quest, His Faithful Servants. This just requires you to complete Barrows 1 time and you'll get 20,000 prayer experience, a pretty hefty chunk. Keep in mind that this is auto-completed if you've unlocked the desert already because of Desert Treasure 2. So if you do want the 20,000 prayer experience, make sure that you complete this before you actually go and unlock the desert. Now, I did say that in my Fremenic video, the only way of getting an Ava's device is to unlock the Fremenic area, which would auto-complete Animal Magnetism. Magnetism, not magnetism. But you can do Animal Magnetism by having Morytania as well as Ascarnia unlocked. If you have those 2 zones, definitely do this just to help your ranged out. In general though, you'll note that there's a lot to do in Morytania that also requires Ascarnia, so these 2 regions kind of combo with each other pretty well. Completing Ghosts Ahoy will give you the Ectophile, which gives you unlimited teleports to the Ectofunctus, and you'll also get free entry into Port Phasmatis. Otherwise, you would have to take like a charter ship from Brimhaven. A little bit more inconvenient. This just helps and is a lot easier. Ectophile is also pretty close to the herb patch over here. There's an allotment in herb patch, but the fairy ring ALQ is also very close. You can use either of these. And over in the southwest, you have the Haunted Mine quest. This gives a massive 22,000 strength experience as well as giving the Salve Amulet. You'll also be able to do the Tarn's Lair mini quest, which gives 5,000 Slayer experience and gives you the Enchanted Salve Amulet. This gives a 20% attack and strength bonus while fighting undead creatures, and both versions can be imbued to give you this bonus while doing ranged or magic as well, and that can be done at like Soul Wars. Now there's a lot of undead enemies in the game, but just some that to keep in mind. The Bloat from Theater of Blood, Vorkath over in the Fremenic area, as well as Vedion and Calvarian who are found in the wilderness. While we're here, you're also going to want to do the Shades of Morton quest, which will unlock the Shades of Morton minigame. Unlocking Morytania will give you access to the Slayer Tower, which has a number of Slayer monsters inside. This is one of the easier places to find abyssal demons. You can, of course, get that through Misthalin. It's just a lot more annoying. This just makes it a lot easier. However, by unlocking Morytania, you'll get these tasks. Banshees, Bloodvelds, including mutated Bloodvelds, which you get from Sins of the Father. You'll get Cave Horrors, which can be found on Mostly Harmless in the cave. These guys drop the Black Mask, which can be upgraded to make your Slayer helmet. You'll also get access to Gargoyles as a task, as well as access to the Grotesque Guardians Slayer boss. And you'll also get Vires as a task. These can only be hit with the Avandus or the Blisterwood Flail, so you would have to do these with melee. And in general, Morytania is a really, really good region for melee. There's a lot that is not only best for melee, but is exclusive to melee. So this may be something you want to consider if you plan on going a mage or a ranged build. Morytania is going to struggle a bit more. That being said, Blisterwood Flail is a 5-tick weapon, so it does benefit from the melee relic pretty substantially. And these guys are going to be an excellent source of combat training. Very nice, very easy to AFK. And finally, you'll get Necreals as a task. These can also be found in the Slayer Tower. However, the Slayer Tower, you can only fight them in single target. So if you did want to fight them in multi-combat, which is one of the fastest Slayer tasks in the entire game, by using Burst or Barrage or Chinchampas or another kind of AoE, you'd want to also have Zaya unlocked so you could do them in the Catacombs of Kren or the Wilderness for the Slayer Cave there. Now, I know that in my Zaya video, I said that Konar would be able to get access to her entire list of Slayer tasks, and I'm not really sure if that's actually going to be the case. Some of the wording I've seen has been changed a bit to suggest that Konar is basically going to function as any other Slayer task. You'll still get the area restrictions, you'll still get Brimstone keys, but you're not going to unlock the entire worth of Catacombs of Kren just by having Zaya unlocked and going to Konar. Again, I'm not 100% sure though on that. I just wanted to correct that in case anybody was going Zaya specifically for that. Now you're going to want to get used to this fairy ring, CKS. This takes you basically right here to Canifis. It's one of the most useful ones. It's also very close to the Slayer Tower. And so just near Canifis, you will have access to temple trekking as a minigame. This is not something I would spend very much time with, but it's almost certainly going to be a task. You're probably going to have to do it at least once. Temple trekking is how you get the Lumberjack outfit, although with the boosted experience rates, I don't even think this is worth going out of your way for. And the rewards from temple trekking themselves are nothing special, although you can get watermelon seeds, which might come in handy sometime. Completing the Morytania Diary will give you the Bone Crusher, which auto-buries bones that drop. This is an incredibly useful way of passively training your prayer experience, and can also be combined in like the Catacombs of Karen so that you get some of your prayer restoration back when fighting there. You'll also get the Morytania Legs 3, which have a really handy teleport to Bergdarat. Now there is another minigame besides temple trekking. You'll also have Shades of Morton. And similarly, while the rewards are nothing special, you'll probably have to do this at least a couple times to get some tasks done. However, if you do grind this out, there are some rewards. The Zealot's Robes is a prayer bonus set, which also gives you a 5% chance to save any bones while burying them. It's really not great, but hey, it might be a task. However, there is one kind of neat item, the Amulet of the Damned. This necklace gives you bonuses when equipping a full Barrows set, but we'll get more into this item when we actually talk about Barrows. One thing I would suggest is that the Morytania Hard Diary gives you 50% more prayer experience while doing Shades of Morton, and the Elite Diary gives you 50% more fire making experience. So if you do have to grind out Shades of Morton, I would very much recommend to get the Elite Diary out of the way first, just so you get that bonus experience while doing it. Now, a surprisingly useful part of Morytania is actually access to the Canifis rooftop course. This is nice as it's actually the fastest marks of grace per hour. In addition, while most courses will severely reduce the amount of marks of grace they drop when you go 20 levels above like the required level for it, Canifis actually does not have this effect, meaning you could be level 99, and it's a level 40 course, by the way, and you'll still be getting the fastest marks of grace per hour. This is really convenient if you have Ascarnia as a region and you do need to get all the marks of grace to afford a graceful outfit, and you don't have access to Kandarin for the Ardoon rooftop course, and you don't have access to Fremenic for the Relica rooftop course. For some more agility experience, you can go to the Werewolf agility course. Good luck getting your skull ball task complete. I'm sure there's going to be one, but the harder agility course is actually surprisingly decent experience. Of course, no agility experience comes close to the Hollowed Sepulchre. This is found over in Darkmeyer, and let me tell you, this is one of the most fun skilling methods in the entire game. It really challenges your movement and rewards good play with higher experience rates. I spent a lot of time in the past leagues getting better at Hollowed Sepulchre, and I had never done it before. And I really love that the tasks are actually related to how fast you complete it. So it's actually a skill-based task to complete. If you're really good, you can get these out of the way. Or you're like me and you spend the entire leagues trying to get better and you still can't beat 6 minutes and 30 seconds to complete the whole course. Now, the rewards kind of suck though. Because you'll have unlimited run energy, the Ring of Endurance just doesn't really do much for you. And it's probably just going to be a task to complete instead. Arguably, the most important shop in all of Darkmeyer is going to be the closed shop up here. This is because to not get caught, you're going to need the Vire Noble set. And you might as well look your best, get some nice colors while you're here anyways. Now, over in Darkmeyer, a significant amount of them can be pickpocketed. This requires level 82 thieving, but the rates are pretty bad. However, with the new Trickster Relic, this would actually give you a 100% pickpocket chance. And you would do this AFK. You would just pickpocket them one time and your character would basically go on until they're completely full of their inventory. So if you are going Morytania, the Trickster Relic is quite strong here. Vires give death and blood runes, as well as uncut rubies and cut diamonds. So that can be useful to make any enchanted bolts that you need for like a range setup. By far, their most important drop is going to be a blood shard, which you can use to make the Amulet of Blood Fury. This gives a passive chance of lifesteal to all of your melee attacks, and because you're going to be doing a lot of damage as melee, on top of all the defense that you have, the extra sustain just really turns you into a tank. The Trickster Relic will give you 2 times the loot, and that actually goes up to 4 times if you have the Rogue's outfit from Ascarnia. So combined, pickpocketing Vires is going to be very powerful. And the more blood shards, the better, because you are going to chew through those blood furies kind of fast. As of now, there doesn't seem to be any relic that preserves the charges of the Amulet of Blood Fury. So yeah, spend as much time as you can pickpocketing these to get those blood shards. Your other way of getting blood shards is to kill Firewatch Sentinels. Again, with a Blisterwood Flail and melee, you're going to be killing these guys really fast. So it's going to be good experience. You're going to have a decent shot at getting some more blood shards. And they also drop a lot of alchables if you wanted to get some money as well. Conveniently, there's an altar here as well as a bank, so it's very close to everything, and you're going to have a very easy time getting them. You can also just unequip your armor and they'll go aggro to you, so again, a very AFK method, and it is also a Slayer task that you can do as well. Now, if you go around Darkmeyer, there's also going to be the Dael Essence Mine found in this dungeon over here. And this is really simple. You basically need to mine the Dael Essence rock that is lit up. Dael Essence can be used while runecrafting for a 50% bonus to experience. And this is also multiplied with the ZMI altar in Kandarin, which has a 70% multiplier. So together with that, you're getting 155%. I can't really say how efficient this is because it's probably going to depend on your relics. With something like Last Recall, ZMI is already very fast, so I don't know if mining Dael is going to really be worth doing to speed up runecrafting, but there are likely going to be tasks involved with it, and so if you want to do some runecrafting, you might as well get the Dael Essence task done first and then go runecrafting after. However, you cannot use Dael Essence for Zaya's Blood and Soul Altar, so don't expect that. Darkmeyer also will give you the Blisterwood tree, which is a very AFK way of training woodcutting. The bank is super close, so it's not a problem at all to go and bank. And this method is slower than Siliceps over in Fossil Island, but it does actually give you some logs, and it's quite a bit more AFK. The logs themselves are pretty bad. The only thing you can do with them is fire making, and they give just barely more experience than Willow logs. They give worse fire making experience than Teaks. If you had the Trickster Relic, though, you'd be able to burn 9 of them at a time, so maybe it's okay. And while you're in Darkmeyer, of course, don't forget to pet Frank. That is why you chose Morytania, right? Once you've completed Sins of the Father, you'll also have access to the True Blood Altar. This can be found in the hideout under Canifis. Sins of the Father will also need to be completed if you wanted to access blood runes from the Guardians of the Rift minigame. And this is also where you're going to find the mutated Bloodvelds, which you can cannon. And Kandarin and Ascarnia are required to have a cannon, but those are pretty good options with Morytania anyways. Kandarin, Ascarnia, Morytania was kind of like the route in the last Trailblazer League. Alright, and the last skilling method to talk about, you will have access to the Ectofunctus. This gives 4 times the experience when you're burying bones, which is even better than the Gilded Altar, which has 350%. And typically this is kind of annoying because you have to run down and get the buckets of slime, But what you can actually do is combine it with Last Recall to speed this process up by quite a bit. Basically, you would get to the bottom floor where the puddle of slime is, and then take the ectofile back up, grind all your bones, worship them, and Last Recall would have saved your teleportation spot at the very bottom where the buckets of slime are collected. So you'll just Last Recall back and start that process again, and it's actually quite fast. Alright, and let's get into our bosses because there is a lot to cover here. Now, starting with Barrows, I wanted to talk about Gamal's Hilt, which comes from the combat achievements. Gamal's Hilt 2, which only requires the medium combat achievements done, and this doesn't mean you have to do all of the easy and mediums, you just have to collect enough points to get Gamal's Hilt 2. You also don't even need Asgarnia to get the Gamal's Hilt. You will be able to get it from the Sage, who is kind of like the League's NPC that gives you whatever you need. And the reason why this item is so good is because it's going to stop the prayer drain while you're doing Barrows. So although combat achievements are pretty difficult to get in like a area restricted game mode, try to see if you can get the hilt before you start like a serious Barrows grind. It's just going to make it a lot easier and you're not going to waste as much prayer. Now in Leagues, Last Recall really makes Barrows a lot more fun to do. Basically, once you've opened the chest and collected your loot, you're going to want to teleport out of here, and that's going to cause Last Recall to save this spot down here in like the basement area where you would collect your loot. Ideally, you'd just be teleporting to Barrows with the Arceus spellbook, and this can probably also be done with the Globetrotter relic as well. Then you would proceed to kill 5 of the 6 Barrows brothers, because obviously one is going to spawn in the basement, and then you Last Recall back here. Opening the chest will summon the 6th brother, you kill them, and yeah, that's a full run of Barrows. It's super easy, it's very fast, you don't have to do any of the annoying doors or puzzles or all that stuff. And if you are trying to get every single Barrow set, I believe the most optimal way is to just kill all 6 brothers. And if you do get everything from one brother, the entire set, then you can stop doing that brother, unless they happen to be the last one spawning at the chest. 4 of the Barrows brothers are weak to magic, but really, with your combat relics, all of them are kind of going to be a joke. You can kill them with whatever you want. So let's go through the sets and see what's actually useful. Darok's set effect is the lower your health, the more max hit you can do. In addition, Darok's Great Axe will go from a 7-tick weapon to a 3-tick weapon with the melee relic. This is a pretty steep increase in DPS, and if you're able to camp very low health for monsters that aren't able to hit you, such as a giant mole, this could really be a lot of damage. Especially if there's any other possible relic that also makes you deal more damage the lower health you have, which we have seen before in the past. The Amulet of the Damned from Shades of Morton adds a bit of recoil damage to the Darok set while wearing the amulet, which doesn't really make any sense because why would you want to do recoil damage if you're not going to be taking any damage because you're at low health anyways? So overall, a pretty useless bonus effect. Now, Guthin's is the one that I'm the most interested in. This is because the War Spear is a 5-tick weapon, meaning with the melee relic, it will go down to a 2-tick. The combat stats here are slightly below the whip, but you do get a 25% lifesteal bonus. And so this is what I've been calling the mosquito build. You're going to be stabbing enemies every 2 ticks with your spear, sucking the blood out of their veins. You're going to be doing a lot of damage. You're going to be life-stealing a lot. Naturally already pretty tanky. And I think a lot of combat is just going to be like super AFK now with the Guthin set because you're just never going to die. I could really see this as a great starting point for raids because you're just going to mitigate all of the damage the bosses do while killing them in good fashion as well. The Amulet of the Damned gives you a bonus effect of letting you overheal by 10. This is nice, but nothing that special. And because I did mention the whip, I know a lot of people called me out because I said the Dragon Longsword is better than the whip. So that was actually a huge mistake on my end. In most situations, the Dragon Long is not going to be strong as the whip. Even with the melee relic buffing it from a 5-tick to a 2-tick weapon and the whip going to a 2-tick weapon, the whip is still just a stronger weapon. The Dragon Long special attack can kind of help, but it's still trailing by about 5 to 10% depending on the combat. However, in some situations where you really need a stab weapon, the Dragon Longsword can be better, and that's where I screwed up. But again, I do apologize. I really hate putting out wrong information because I know that might screw you up for your league stuff. So if you hear anybody talking about how the Dragon Long is better than the whip because they saw my video on it, that's wrong. I tried to correct it, and I do apologize. Now, although Torag's hammers are a 5-tick weapon, they still kind of suck. The set effect just lowers an enemy's run energy, which is pretty much entirely useless. And the Amulet of the Damned effect just gives you a little bit of bonus defense while you have missing health, but that's again nothing special. Varak is also a 5-tick weapon. It's a 2-handed flail. This does have a percentage chance of hitting through an enemy's defense, so you might be able to get some really good hits against like very high defense mobs. But for the most part, I'm pretty sure a Dragon Longsword with a Dragon Defender is still just better. The Amulet of the Damned does give you a 7 prayer bonus on top, so that can be kind of nice here. Now, the Barrows set are a very defensive piece of gear. They can kind of act as like your tank body and your tank legs, especially. And if you're running the melee relic and you're getting the extra bonus defense, this can make you quite tanky using Barrows set. Especially if you have access to Din's Bulwark, which actually gets stronger the more defense you have. I don't want to make this a whole progression video about the Din's Bulwark, but there is a lot of gear here that is surprisingly good only because Din's Bulwark scales off of defense. For Mage, you'll have Arms set. This has a really weak set bonus, it just drains the strength of the mob. But the armor itself is pretty good before you have access to like Virtus robes or Ancestral robes. The staff is unique in that it can autocast Arceus spells if you ever want to be using those for combat, and with the Amulet of the Damned, you'll also be able to autocast Ancient Magics. Of course, this will require the Desert to have Ancient Magics, but this is going to be a better way of autocasting Ancient Magics. It's better than the Ancient Staff until you replace it with like a Kodai Wand. And finally, we have Carol's set for ranged. The set bonus is you will lower your target's agility level, which is shockingly bad. The Amulet of the Damned will give you a 25% chance to hit twice. So it's a little bit extra damage. Might be kind of cool to, proc that with the range relic and hit like 4 times. But for the most part, it's a very weak set. The biggest problem here is that Carol's crossbow, while it's a crossbow, it doesn't shoot like enchanted bolts or anything like that. So you're not going to get the effect from that. It exclusively uses Carol bolts, which you can just buy from a shop. But hey, if you're going Morytania, you're going to need something to train your ranged anyways, so this might be like a nice option to just have a ranged weapon available if that's your off style. Now, killing gargoyles gives you a 1 in 150 chance at getting a brittle key, so you'll get this very fast by killing them. And this will unlock the rooftop entrance over to the grotesque guardians, which you do need a Slayer task to actually go and challenge. It's a Slayer boss. Grotesque Guardians do have 2 bosses, Dawn, who can only be fought with range or magic, and Dusk, who can only be fought with melee, so you will need multiple combat styles there. The Grotesque Guardians have a very common drop of Granite Dust, which is used to make granite cannonballs. Now, obviously, this would also require Kandarin and Ascarnia to actually unlock a cannon and be able to make cannonballs. But again, those regions are pretty good for Morytania, and so if you had them anyways, might as well get the extra max hit from your cannon. It goes up from 30 to 35. The Guardians drop the Granite Gloves. This is a defensive glove option that becomes really good with Din's Bulwark. And they'll also drop the Black Tourmaline Core, which can be used to make the Guardian Boots along with Bandos Boots. So again, you're going to need Ascarnia, and this is one of the best defensive boots in the game. Okay, and the big one, Theater of Blood. This is probably going to be where you're going to get the biggest amount of points, the most amount of tasks completed, just by doing a lot of Theater of Blood, getting all the drops, completing it in certain time thresholds. So you should definitely expect to spend quite a bit of time here. Now, just like the rest of the zone, the raid itself is fairly melee heavy and most rooms are best done with melee. However, you will need to have some range and magic for Nilos. And while the zone is favored so much for melee, if you do have friends to do Theater of Blood with, it might be useful to have a specialized ranger or a specialized mage who's going to help speed up the group's clears. I can't say for sure, and I honestly think that 5 people going melee with 1 person just relegated to blowpipe duty or something. There's really a lot of theory crafting that can go into League's Theater of Blood. It's why it was so much fun last time. So the best strategies are really going to depend on what you have access to. In Leagues, it is possible to do Theater of Blood solo at a reasonable pace. It's still going to be a challenge compared to Chambers of Xeric and Tombs of Amasket, but it is doable. However, the raid is scaled from between 3 to 5 people, so trios are probably going to be the most effective. And if you don't have consistent people to play with, it might be difficult to get a really high kill count task completed for Theater of Blood completely solo. Now, the chance of getting a purple inside of Theater of Blood is a static 1 out of 9, regardless of group size, and then that's split between how many people you have. So if it's a 1 out of 9, but you had 3 people because it's a trio, the chance of you getting it would basically be a 1 out of 27. With a 5 times drop chance, though, this means that the chance of getting a purple is actually 1 out of 1.8. So if you were able to do these solo, you would be getting a purple basically every other raid. And if you're doing this in a trio, that means you would be getting it 1 in every 5.4 raids. And like 1 in 5 raids, I mean, that's pretty good. That's a lot of purples. It's pretty fast. Now, just getting a purple isn't enough. Obviously, we want to get the good uniques. And the absolute best unique here is going to be the Scythe, which once you've gotten a purple, it's a 1 in 19 chance of it being a Scythe. This means in trios, you have about a 1 in 100 chance of getting a Scythe. And because you can smash Theater of Blood in like 20 minutes, it's actually a pretty decent raid. It's going to only take you like 30 hours or so. To get the full power of the Scythe, you will need a Vial of Blood. This drops from Theater of Blood itself, and is also used to make Bastion and Battle Mage potions. That just combines the effect of the combat style with the super defense potion. You'll also need blood runes, so just make sure you have a way of accessing those, or you could just make them yourself with the blood altar that we talked about earlier. I would definitely recommend, though, just having a shop where you can buy blood runes. It's going to speed that up a lot. Of course, the scythe is a 5-tick weapon, meaning if you have the melee relic, this is basically your best in slot melee weapon for any monster that is larger than 1x1 tile. It's going to do an absolute insane amount of damage, and once you do get the scythe, all the other raids or bosses that you're going to do are going to be sped up by quite a bit. Also be able to get the rapier. This is a 4-tick melee weapon, unfortunately, and while it is better than the whip, it kind of loses to the fang really hard if you've got it. But this might be your melee weapon of choice while you do Theater of Blood, or you could go with something like the Guthan setup just so that you have all that lifesteal. You'll also be able to get the Sanguinesti staff. This is better than a Toxic Trident, however it is much worse than the Shadow. Not really a competitive option if you're going for a mage build. Theater will also give you the Justiciar set. This armor is super tanky and also gives you some damage reduction percentage. It might really be useful for the Infernos that you're just taking no damage there. And that's probably going to be your best in slot gear if you're going for a Din's Bulwark setup. Finally, the most common drop from the Theater of Blood is the Avernic Hilt. This, of course, makes the Avernic Defender, but you would need the Dragon Defender from Ascarnia. Don't have a Defender, this is a completely useless drop. Alright, and we've got one more boss to talk about. This is found in the Town of Sleep. You can actually get here from the Theater of Blood lobby just by running up, but I think there's also a rowboat from Port Phasmatis, or you could just run there. And so in the Sisterhood Sanctuary, this is where you'll be able to take on the Nightmare. On top of being solo only, Fasani's Nightmare is a little bit harder, but Fasani's Nightmare offers better rates for all the drops. They're the same drops, just a better rate. I would definitely recommend to try to do Fasani's Nightmare at least to get the Sleepy Tablet. This gives you the sleep teleport in your Draken's Medallion just so you can get here a little bit faster because it is kind of out of the way. Once again, the Nightmare is best done with melee. You can kill it with magic and ranged, but she's really tanky, so it's going to be quite the struggle here. In addition, the drops here are going to be quite a grind as well, with the Nightmare Staff Orbs having a base rarity of 1 in 3,000, so even at 5 times drop rate, you're looking at a 1 in 600 chance. This is kind of what you sign up for if you're going for Morytania. There's a lot of PVM to do, and quite a lot of grinding that you're going to have to do as well. Now, the main drop from the Nightmare is, of course, the Nightmare Staff. This is a 5-tick weapon, and it also deals 15% more damage. However, it runs into a weird issue when using the standard spellbook. If you wanted to cast Fire Surge, the best spell from the standard spellbook, you would need Wrath Rune, which would require Fremenic to complete Dragonslayer 2, and then Kandarin so you can actually have access to the Myths Guild, and so you can make Wrath Runes. And ideally with the Nightmare Staff, you would also want the Tome of Fire from Zaya, but this would be 4 regions, so it doesn't really work. It kind of all falls apart. Theoretically, you could drop Kandarin, and you could actually farm the Wrath Runes by killing Vorkath or Rune Dragons or Addy Dragons. But seriously, don't do that to yourself. It's going to be absolutely miserable, and you're still probably not doing as much damage as a Shadow. Now, Nightmare drops 3 orbs, which upgrade the Nightmare Staff further and give it an extra effect. The Harmonized Orb speeds up the staff by 1 tick. If you're planning on using this for Mage, though, this will take it from 5 ticks to 4 ticks, and both of those get rounded to 2 ticks anyways. So if you're running the Mage Relic, that's complete waste. It's actually just, it does nothing. The Eldritch Orb adds a special attack, which restores prayer points by 50% of the damage dealt. This isn't awful, but there's probably a lot better uses for your special attack than just restoring some prayer. And the only option that might be useful is the Volatile Nightmare Staff. This adds a special attack which deals a high amount of damage, and in most leagues, special attack weapons do end up being very good. So while I haven't seen a special attack relic, I would still keep an eye on this. I know I said that the Accursed Scepter was the only mage weapon, and a lot of you pointed out that this one is also something to look out for as well. Morytania with mage has to go through a lot of hurdles, so I don't think that this is going to be the best. It's just something that might still develop as we see the rest of the relics come out. Of course, if you're not running the mage relic, you still might want to use this just as your mage weapon of choice. You do want to have weapons for the styles that you're not using as your relic. Now, Nightmare also drops the Inquisitor set. This actually has the strength bonus of Bandos. So while it doesn't beat Torva, if you're not going for Ascarnia, the Inquisitor set is going to be your best melee armor. And the Inquisitor armor also has a bonus to crush weapons. The Scythe does actually have a crush option, which comes at the cost of accuracy, but depending on what kind of monsters you're fighting and what kind of accuracy you have, that might pull out as more damage. Finally, the Inquisitor Mace. I don't see this making its way into a lot of melee builds, just because, again, it's It's a 4-tick weapon, so it kind of has that same problem as Garazi Rapier. But if you're not going for a melee relic in Morytania, then the Inquisitor set with the Inquisitor Mace is probably going to be your highest DPS. Alright, and that was quite a lot to cover, so hopefully you didn't get too bored of me reading off of boss drops. Morytania has a lot of bosses, a lot of gear to go for, so good luck if you're choosing Morytania. Morytania is a really hard region to get like a great idea of, just because so much of it depends on how willing you are to do Theater of Blood and what kind of people you have available to do Theater of Blood with. I can say from personal experience though, that some of the most fun I had in Shattered Relics League was doing Theater of Blood with friends. And even if I never got a scythe there, it was still a lot of fun. Like, I really enjoyed that experience. So if you have people to do it with, check Morytania out. It's worth taking a look at. And that just about wraps it up. We're almost done with all of the deep dive videos. We've only got a couple left to go. And even though it does take me a while to go through them all, I am doing my best to have them all out by League's release, just so that you get a chance to see your zone. I'm not forgetting about any of you, not even the wilderness. So just keep an eye out for more of those videos coming soon. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.